Welcome to our economics lesson on consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus. These concepts are fundamental to understanding how markets create value and how different market participants benefit from trade. Let's start by defining these important concepts. Consumer surplus is the difference between what a consumer is willing to pay for a good or service and what they actually pay. Producer surplus is the difference between what a producer receives for selling a good or service and the minimum amount they would be willing to accept. Total surplus is simply the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus, representing the total economic benefit created by a transaction. Now, let's look at our first question about the tutoring scenario. My friend is willing to pay $50 per hour for economics tutoring. This is my friend's maximum willingness to pay, or their value of the tutoring service. I know someone who tutors, and the value of their time is $30 per hour. This represents the tutor's opportunity cost, or minimum acceptable price. They agree to a price of $45 per hour. Let's calculate the surpluses in this scenario. The consumer surplus is the difference between my friend's willingness to pay and the actual price. $50 minus $45 equals $5 per hour. The producer surplus is the difference between the price received and the tutor's opportunity cost. $45 minus $30 equals $15 per hour. The total surplus is the sum of consumer and producer surplus. $5 plus $15 equals $20 per hour. Let me show these areas on our diagram. So for question 1, the consumer surplus is $5 per hour, the producer surplus is $15 per hour, and the total surplus is $20 per hour. Now, let's move to question 2. The claim states, if the tutor valued their time at $60 per hour, and all parties behave rationally, my friend would still receive tutoring, but total surplus would be a lower positive number than the total surplus we found in question 1. Let's analyze this. If the tutor values their time at $60 per hour, this means their opportunity cost is now higher than my friend's maximum willingness to pay of $50 per hour. In this case, there is no price that would satisfy both parties. Any price below $60 would not be acceptable to the tutor because it would be below their opportunity cost. Any price at or above $60 would not be acceptable to my friend because it exceeds their maximum willingness to pay of $50. Because there's no price that works for both parties, there would be no tutoring and therefore no surplus. So the claim is false. If the tutor valued their time at $60 per hour, no tutoring would occur, and the total surplus would be zero, not a lower positive number. Let's move on to question 3 about Bill and the Rubik's Cubes. Initially, Bill bought 5 Rubik's Cubes for $2 each and could resell them for $6 each. So Bill's producer surplus was $6 minus $2, which equals $4 per cube. Multiplied by 5 cubes, that's a total of $20. When tariffs came into effect, Bill had to pay $4 per cube instead, but kept the resale price at $6. Now Bill's producer surplus is $6 minus $4, which equals $2 per cube. For 5 cubes, that's a total of $10. So, the tariff reduced Bill's producer surplus by $2 per unit, or from $4 per cube to $2 per cube. The answer is reduced by $2 per unit. Now, let's look at question 4. The claim states, if a trade occurs, that must mean total surplus of the trade is greater than or equal to zero. This relates to a fundamental principle in economics. Rational agents only participate in voluntary trades if they benefit, or at least don't lose from the transaction. For a trade to occur voluntarily, the buyer must value the good at least as much as the price they pay, and the seller must value the price received at least as much as their cost. Therefore, we will have consumer surplus equals buyer's value, price greater than or equal to zero, producer surplus equals price, seller's cost greater than or equal to zero, total surplus equals CS plus PS greater than or equal to zero plus zero is equal to zero. So the claim is true. If a trade occurs, the total surplus must be greater than or equal to zero. Finally, let's examine question 5. The claim states a trade only occurs if consumer and producer surplus is equal for a given trade. This is actually not true. The division of total surplus between consumers and producers depends on the price, which is determined by bargaining power, market conditions, and other factors. Let me show you examples where trades occur with different surplus splits. As we can see in our diagram, at different prices, the consumer and producer surplus will be different, At a price of $40, consumer surplus is $10 and producer surplus is $10, equal in this case. But at a price of $35, consumer surplus is $15 while producer surplus is only $5. And at a price of $45, consumer surplus is $5 while producer surplus is $15. All of these are valid trades that could occur as long as both parties benefit, regardless of whether the surpluses are equal. Therefore, the claim is false. A trade can occur whenever total surplus is positive, regardless of how that surplus is distributed between consumer and producer.